There we go. One, two, three. What's up, guys? Welcome to Moon Under City. I'm Chris. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be checking out and reviewing Alien Earth Episode 2. So, right away, let's get into it. Episode 2 kicks off with our search and rescue crew with Joe Hermit, who's our protagonist's brother, Wendy. It's her brother, Joe. So, Joe Hermit, he's the doctor of the crew. He's the one that when we saw in episode 1, they're really treating him like garbage. He's got like a sergeant that really treats everybody like garbage. So they're walking around the Maginot of the crashed spaceship, doing a little search and rescue. Not really rescuing anybody, just kind of walking around. And so as they're walking around, the alien is stalking them. So the alien stalks them, and while the alien stalks them, we cut back to Wendy telling one of her robot buddies, Slightly, about how she's got a brother and she wants him to keep it a secret that she's actually there looking for the brother, even though she's told Kirsch and Boy Cavalier that that's her main objective is to go look for her brother. So she tells Slightly that she's looking for her brother, she's got a brother, and hopefully she's going to find him there. So Slightly is like all about it. He talks about how he had a father and his father's gone. And so he can relate to her like missing a family member. So Slightly is a neat character. And he actually accompanies Wendy in this episode a lot. So we'll see a lot of Slightly. In this episode, we get a few names finally. We learn Slightly's name. We hear Joe and his name. They call him, his name is Joe Hermit. So we hear him referred to as Hermit a lot. We even hear Kirsch being referred to in the show as well by Boy Cavalier, who we also get his full name and name in the show. So we're finally getting some names, and we even get an introduction to the Weyland-Yutani lady. That happens later on down the road, so we'll get there. So next what happens is our character Joe Hermit is wandering around with the search and rescue crew, kind of wandering around a nice Member Berry set, right? The set is very reminiscent of the Nostromo from the first Alien film, so that's cool. But he gets separated from them by a pretty slow alien who kind of takes his time with Joe for some reason. Joe has incredible plot armor in this episode. So, the first instance of his plot armor, he gets separated from the crew and he kind of ends up falling and going a couple floors below, and the alien ends up like chasing him slowly, very slowly. And then he locks himself in an elevator and goes down a little bit, and the alien can't figure out how to get in there. Cut back to Wendy and her lost boys and Kirsch. They arrive at the crash site. Wendy's doing her robot thing of being able to hack and control machinery with nobody really understanding how she does it or how like where she got those capabilities from. They're dumbfounded, so they don't know. They're just like, wow, she could do that. Cool. Again, Boy Cavalier's got this plan of really no plan. Wendy came to him and was like, hey, I want to go find my brother. There's this crash site. Can we go help? And he's just like, yeah, all right, we'll test you guys out and see what happens. Even though they haven't been tested before, they haven't been trained at all. They're very childlike still because they're child minds in these robot bodies. And so they're supposed to be chaperoned by Wendy and Kirsch, but they're just as useless. So regardless, Wendy ends up spotting her brother on the machines that she's able to control. For some reason, she's not aware of what floor he's on. So she asks what floor he's on, and then her and Slightly go off looking for him. While the Lost Boys and Kirsch, they go out and they go looking for just anything at this point. Up until now, we get Boy Cavalier. He has a little conversation with Dame Sylvia. She's like the caretaker of the children. She works alongside Kirsch. in this little experiment that they have going on. So they have a nice little conversation about immortality and what they're doing and this experiment that they're doing. And how he just let them go and just fuck off on this like crash site where there's like who knows what's gonna happen. And then following that, their conversation. Well, during that conversation, Boy Cavalier just lets Dame Sylvia know that he's not too interested in the aspect of that they found immortality, in that they could transfer minds and consciousness over into robot bodies that could last a lot longer. How long, we're not sure yet. But in any case, they've found a way to maybe extend the human existence. So he's not really concerned with that. He just kind of wants to talk to somebody that's just as smart or smarter than him. That's what he says. So he just wants to just be talking to somebody with way more wisdom and smarts than he does. So he's now, again, he's a very smart guy, billionaire, very young though. But again, I guess he needs somebody smarter and wiser than him to talk to, because Dame Sylvia is just not cutting it. And neither is Kirsch. He talks about Kirsch, he's just smart with like, he just has data. He's just able to compress data and spit out information. He's not, embodied in wisdom or anything like that. So he's hopeful that maybe one of the Lost Boys or Wendy is going to be somebody he can talk to and meet his match and be somebody that he could have an intellectual conversation with. Because again, Dame Sylvia just not doing it for him. Okay. So then Boy Cavalier ends up having a conversation with the Weyland-Yutani president or chairperson. They have a conversation back and forth, and she wants to send in her own people because she discloses to him that she has specimens on board and that she wants to go get them and that they're important to her. And then he just basically tells her to fuck off and like, no, it's on my planet. It crashed into my building, and I'll let you know when you can come get it. So she just shows all her cards, and he's like, "Ha, I gotcha. I'm not gonna allow you to come." Why she thinks that he would do something like that is beyond me. But the Weyland-Yutani chick is not that smart. So he's like, "Nah, I'll do it. You could come later. Go get your lawyers, and then come." Then you could come find your specimens. So then he grabs a hold of Kirsch and tells him, "Hey, the specimens on board. Go grab them." So now Kirsch and the Lost Boys they got some new mission, and they got to go find these alien species. So then now we have a flashback from whose perspective. At first, it seems like the perspective of this flashback is from Joe, but these flashbacks in the show are handled very clumsily. We end up getting a lot of different perspectives in these flashbacks, and then when we come out of them, we basically come out of it through another character. And so at the end of these flashbacks, I'm not really sure whose memory or flashback this really is. From what it seems like Wendy and Joe are sharing these flashbacks, and we're just kind of getting exposition. But every once in a while, we jump between the point of view of the scientist and Kirsch and Boy Cavalier and different machinery, and it's a little weird. And the editing in the show, along with the weird editing, the transitions, like these they have like the show uses a lot of like cross dissolves and cross fades. They're not done very well. They're just, they add to this confusion of like, well, whose perspective are we really seeing? And if it's both, what are we looking at? So yeah, the flashbacks are done very weird. So in this flashback, though, we get a little bit of information that Joe is trying to go back to like medical school and not be a part of this search and rescue crew anymore. And then he's told by the robot that he's got so many days or so many years left to finish out his term at his job before he can go off and do his own thing. And so in this flashback, Wendy is looking through like an iPad and also talking to him through this camera somehow. And then we also see the scientist and Boy Cavalier witnessing her like obsessing over like watching Joe, and then also controlling machinery and trying to like control like what's happening to him in his daily life as well. Like she tries to get the computer to, I guess, give him a break, but that ends up not happening. Okay, so at this point, our robots and the Lost Boys and Kirsch, they're off looking for this alien species and specimens. So they come across the plant-like species that's just like hanging in the hallway. So this thing is just hanging there and it's making all kinds of noises and it's opening up, moving around, and things are coming out of it. And they're all like kind of sketchy about it and looking at it. And so they gotta like find a way to get that. Then as they're looking around, they see a lot of the carnage that's going on in the ship, that's happened throughout the ship. And then they find a couple more species. One hot dog worm thing that bites our marine guy in the first episode. That thing ends up coming out like this like crawly creature thing with just like an giant egg sac on its back, and it just kind of crawls away. And then along with that, we get our little eyeball T Oculus octopus thing, the eyeball octopus. So we get that guy. He pops up. He jumps after our Lost Boys, the girl, one of the redhead, and they have a problem with it. But then they end up trapping it. They're like really freaked out, scared of it, but they ended up taking care of it and kind of put some stuff over it and just started just like holding it down for a little bit until Kirsch comes in and finds out what to do next. So then, while the Lost Boys are dealing with the T Oculus and all the alien species, we go back to Joe and Wendy. Wendy's still looking for Joe with Slightly, and Joe's escaped the elevator and then runs into one of his marine search and rescue buddies. So he runs into one of them, and they try to find their way out. And along the way, they're still doing their search and rescue thing, trying to get like people out of the building, seeing if there's anybody hurt. And they end up seeing that there's just people still in an apartment, and they're just like hanging out. And for some reason, they're dressed in like Louis XIV costumes, and they're just like having like this bougie party. And there's no alarm systems. There's nothing going on like that. They're just totally oblivious to the spaceship that's crashed into their apartment building, and they're just like having a party, and they're just partying away. So while they're doing it, Joe and the search and rescue guy are telling them to get the hell out of there. But then all of a sudden, whoops, the alien pops up and just instantly kills everybody in almost like an instant. But Joe's able to kind of get a slowed down version of the alien every time the alien sets his sight on Joe. And the alien gets really close to killing Joe or just getting on top of him and maybe doing something. We're not really sure. And then in that instance, Morrow pops up and electrocutes both Joe and the alien, and then cocoons the alien in like sort of like this spray that's on his gun. So he takes care of Joe, takes care of the alien quickly. Alien's taken care of. And his plan is, I guess, to just drag the alien out of there and get out of this place. Now, Morrow's plan also doesn't make sense along with a lot of people's plans in this show. The reason why I don't think his plan makes any sense is because Morrow is a character who's been out in space for a really long time. They've been on this mission to collect these species, and so they've been doing like this space traveling. And so he's been asleep and gone for a long time. And so he comes back and all of a sudden he's just able to make his way through like this world and all this technology that he's should not be that familiar with. But nevertheless, he's familiar with it and he's confident enough that he's just going to drag an alien out of this building and it's all going to work out. So his plan for me like doesn't make too much sense. And in the end, he ends up getting caught by the search and rescue team. The alien pops out of the cocoon right away, basically, conveniently, and then conveniently doesn't mess with Morrow in that instance either. The alien just kind of runs off, and we're not really sure yet why the alien ignores Morrow. Could be because he's a cyborg. Probably because he's a cyborg. But alien runs off. Morrow doesn't have his hands on him anymore. And then we're back with Wendy looking for Joe. So she ends up finding him. And so from here on, we get Joe and Wendy kind of just walking through the ship and the apartment, and nothing's really happening. He ends up finding out that that's his sister, and you think that there's going to be some like drama there, a little bit of storyline that might progress throughout the season of the show, maybe a couple episodes. But this whole thing of her being his sister and him believing it right away is resolved pretty quickly. He kind of just believes that that's his sister and that this is the reality now, that her consciousness is now in this synthetic body and she's a hybrid, and yeah, he could trust her and that's his sister, and he's going along with it. And right in that instance, boom, the alien pops back out, jumps after Joe, and the show literally ends on a cliffhanger where Wendy leaves slightly at the edge and is gone off to go find out what happened to Joe after he gets tackled by the alien and falls to an apparent death. And that's the end of the episode. So, yeah. Again, the episode ends up clearing up a lot of stuff that we had questions for in the first episode, which is good. There's a little bit more stuff going on as far as like action, right? So we have the alien doing a few more kills, but I don't know if I said before, but the alien doesn't really act like an alien that we've seen before. Usually we've seen the aliens act almost like bug-like or kind of like ants, where they're like a hive mind. They kind of they kind of gather stuff up and then they bring it over to their queen, right? We've seen them before, like get hosts and gather up the hosts and the humans or whatever and have them all like kind of wrapped up in the cocoon and get them ready for an alien egg. Now, it could be that's what's going to be happening with Joe. Probably, maybe, most definitely. I've seen the third episode already, so spoilers. But in any case, yeah. Up until now, we've only seen the alien just kind of stalk and then just like murder everything just right away, and then only be interested in Joe so far. Everything else, it's pretty much decimated, not had any interest in bringing back to an egg. But for some reason, it has an interest in bringing Joe back to an egg. So that's the deal. So that's the aliens. The other aliens are the Teoculus pops up. The way the Teoculus, the scene where the crew, the Lost Boys are kind of dealing with the Teoculus is pretty fun. The Teoculus is hiding in a cat. The Teoculus is just this squid thing, and it could like disguise itself in other like eye sockets. Not very well. It still looks pretty gnarly. And then they see a cat because there's a cat on the spaceship for some reason, and so the cat ends up having this alien in its face, and then the eyeball decides to pop out of there and jump after one of the Lost Boys, the redhead girl. So what's her name? Let's see if we can find her name. Get her name. Maybe I don't have her name. Negative. That's whack. Okay. So anyway, so the T-Oculus jumps after one of the Lost Boys, and they have a little hard time with it, but they ended up trapping it, and they're fine. And that part's kind of cool. The effects of the T-Oculus running around and jumping on them and at them is fun, and the effect of it coming out of the cat's face is really done very well and very creepy, and that part's pretty cool. The Louis XIV scene is very weird. Why are all those people still in the building after this crash? Why are they all dressed up that way? Like, what? It's very just off. It's a weird like commentary that's going on in that scene. But nevertheless, they all get like jacked up by the alien, who ends up jumping after Joe, who ends up having plot armor for like the third time in this episode. And like I said, he ends up getting stopped by Morrow, who pops up just like really quickly in this episode just to capture the alien and then let it go very quickly. The whatever spray he sprays it down with doesn't last that long and ends up opening up, and the alien kind of gets out of it pretty much right away. So I don't know if he knew that was going to happen that fast and he was just trying to make a break for it, or if he didn't know what he was doing, because I feel like he wouldn't know what he's doing with any of the technology or any of the stuff that's around. Maybe have an idea, but yeah, him being able to operate the technology and operating systems and things on a different company's base doesn't really track for me. But let's see what happens. Maybe we'll find out some more information about Morrow and his past and how he knows how to do some of these things. So yeah, and then after that, we like I said, we get Wendy and Joe kind of reuniting, and they bond pretty quickly at the end of the show. I think that could have been handled a little bit better. They could have that could have been a storyline that actually developed and unfolded over time. That could have been like a nice storyline between them, like if he trusts her and her trying to like convince him that yes, this is her. He just kind of like goes along with like, oh, okay, yeah, that's Wendy, and this is what's happened now, and this is the reality. Doesn't like really question what's going on or what's happened or anything like that. He's just kind of they kind of walk around the hallways a few times, and then they hug and realize that they have the same memories. So that I found a little just cringy, not cringy, but just a little hammy, and like I said, they could have developed that a little bit better. That could have been something that was developed into something more. But again, a lot of things in this show end up getting like brought up and then kind of skimmed over, and we don't really come back to it, or it doesn't seem like we're coming back to it enough. So we're not really sure why we get all these stupid Peter Pan references. We're not really sure what Boyd Cavalier's real honest plan is with the hybrids and how this whole operation came to be. It's still a little bit of a secret and up in the air what's going on. We still don't know what's going on with Kirsch and his motives. So there are still a lot of questions, but it's still episode 2. It's still early days, so there should maybe be some questions. But yeah, at least we got some names. We got some clarification of that. And yeah, so that's episode 2. So come back. We'll do a review of episode 3, and we'll see you guys later. Thanks, guys. We'll see you guys then. Later. Peace out.